Maybe you heard this story, too. We were talking yesterday about the danger of to whistleblowers. We were talking about Seth Rich, who may or may not have been the whistleblower in the DNC scandal of reporting or of releasing the emails to WikiLeaks, ended up finding himself dead. And then you guys can weigh into your heart's content, because I already have somebody telling me that I need to have somebody on from the New York Times because they understand this story and I don't. Well, sorry, guys. I'm just not going to give airtime to somebody who is trying to float this absolutely nonsensical premise that the Russians somehow hacked the election and unfairly derailed Hillary Clinton. I just don't believe it. We'll be right back on News Talk 770. I always feel I have to repeat myself on this one, but let me remind you of why it is. It makes no sense to say that the Russians were responsible for the leaks that appeared on WikiLeaks that ultimately ended up impacting Hillary Clinton's campaign. Is because Julian Assange himself has said that's not where they got it from. I think it would be far more fruitful to investigate Seth Rich, who turned up with a bullet in the back of his head. And nobody's been able to resolve that. There were no thefts from him. But guess what? WikiLeaks put out a $25,000 reward for anyone who had information leading to the conviction of the person who killed Seth Rich. They have also said, gee, we didn't get it from the Russians. We got it from somebody internal to the Democrat Party headquarters. I don't want to sound all conspiratorial, but doesn't it seem to make more sense that the place they got it from was Seth Rich, and that there was some retaliation there by someone? I don't know who. I don't know, but that's not being investigated. It just makes so this is the point. This is what Julian Assange said, and he's been saying this multiple times about why it is or where it is they ended up getting their resources from, and the fact that it had nothing to do with the Russians. So here's what he had to say. So if you haven't heard that, that's the reason why anytime anyone says it was the Russians who were behind the hack, I just don't believe it. Yes, they were hacking. They do, left, right, and center. But if you're going to say it's the damaging emails on WikiLeaks that ended up derailing Hillary's campaign, that's not where they got them from. And the fact of the matter is, though, they were true. Now, why would people have been concerned about Hillary Clinton becoming president? Well, we already know that the Clinton Foundation was receiving scads of money. I think they have received nothing close to what they were getting when she was in a position of the State Department and people thought she was going to become U.S. president. Why would that be? And then you can also trace all kinds of activity of decision-making being made by her department after donations had been made to the foundation. You can also trace decisions being made and money then going to pay for speaking engagements for her husband, Bill Clinton. These are the reasons why people didn't want to see this woman in office. They didn't want the office of the U.S. president to be for sale.
Oh my gosh, by the time we were finished with me, I was typhoid Mary, and poor Mary. I mean, she didn't deserve it either when you go back and look at history. I think that the real fascinating thing about the Hillary Clinton collapse is the lack of self-awareness about what she did that caused people to change their opinion of her. I liked her too, back before she was Secretary of State, back before she used her position to sell access and make decisions on the basis of who contributed to her Clinton Foundation and who gave business or gave speaking invitations, high-priced speaking invitations to her husband. I mean, those are some of the things that caused me some concern. I don't mean this to be a segue, because I know whenever I do raise this, some of you think that it sounds all conspiratorial. But remember that time that I said that I'm really tired of how they keep on trying to rerun the last election. They keep trying to blame the Russians for the leak. Do you remember when I said, if you ask me what the most obvious and convincing answer might be to where it is Hillary's leaked emails came from? It wasn't her leaked emails. It was John Podesta, her campaign manager, related to her. This is part of the reason why we have confirmation of how she was using the Clinton Foundation, as it came out from that. We also have confirmation of how she rigged the election against Bernie Sanders as a result of that leak. And they keep on pointing at the Russians. We have this whole congressional hearing going on right now around Russian influence in the election. Well, as Christian points out, WikiLeaks has repeatedly said that it had that their source was not the Russian government. It was not a state enterprise. And I have told you that before. I've shared with you as well some of the analysis of people who have been in the intelligence community. And I said that to me, the most obvious place to look was when WikiLeaks put up a $25,000 reward for information leading to the arrest of who was responsible for the death of Seth Rich, who was the Democratic staffer who was found shot in the back. His watch was still on him, his credit cards were still on him, his cell phone was still on him, nothing was stolen. I said, it seems to me that everything is pointing to the fact that this guy was the source of the Democrat leak. And sure enough, you've got WikiLeaks this weekend tweeting this out. They've got a private direct mail exchange between someone called Guccifer 2.0, which is, according to the U.S., the quote-unquote Russian spy, to an actress model named Robin Young, and it reveals that his source was Seth. He was my whistleblower. So I don't know. This is a weird world that we find ourselves in, guys. Like, this is, you keep on hearing from the people who leaked the information. Here are our sources, and you keep having this parallel universe happening in Congress saying, no, it's got to be the Russian state. And when you bring up sort of the true story, people accuse you of fake news. Whereas I'm thinking that the stuff that is trying to be peddled by Congress is kind of the fake stuff. This is the upside-down world we find ourselves in.
So I'm being asked, why do you give no weight to reports of Russia meddling in the election? If it was the Democrats, all Republicans would be lighting their hair on fire. Also, if Barack Obama ever said that he grabbed a woman by the, it would have been the end of his political career. Hey, there's no question. I mean, as you know, I do not like the way Donald Trump expresses himself. However, he obviously tapped into something that was rampant in the general public, which was a frustration with the establishment. As for why I put no weight on Russia meddling in the election, is because Julian Assange, and I played for you the clips from him, has said he did not get the leaks from Russia. He got them from a Democrat insider. And the person who posted them, I can't remember what his handle was now, said he got them from Seth Rich, the guy who turned up dead with a couple of bullets in the back of his head. So those are the reasons why I don't put much credence on the Russians doing this fishing expedition, because as John McAfee said as well, and I played that for you too, it could have been done by a 14-year-old. If the Russians were doing it, they wouldn't have used 2-year-old technology. So those are reasons why I don't put a lot of weight on it. But it remains to be seen. If I am wrong, no doubt information will come out. Isn't it interesting, though, that after all these months of congressional hearings, that we still don't have anybody with a smoking gun saying that the Russians definitively intervened in the election? All we know is that Michael Flynn had a conversation with the Russian ambassador, and he lost his job over it. I mean, that's been the biggest thing that's come out of all of this surveillance. Why do I say that? Well, Mary Lou is giving me a heck of a time, because I have been saying that all of this nonsense about the connection between Donald Trump and Putin finagling the U.S. election is silly, and it's an obsession. And part of the reasons I've said that is because Julian Assange said, I didn't get the information from the Russians. And the other part is, what is it that people are alleging Putin did that influenced the outcome of the election? If it's the WikiLeaks leaks, then put that on the back burner, because Julian Assange said that somebody else was responsible for them. If it's something else, I am interested in knowing. Because as I told Mary Lou, it seemed to me during the election, everybody was in the can for Hillary. So what did Putin do precisely, exactly, that was so influential in changing the election results? I do not have an answer to that question. To the first point, she said, yeah, but there are other folks out there who say that Julian Assange did get the information from the Russians, regardless of what he has to say. That may be so. But listen to this report that came out today. Murdered DNC staffer Seth Rich shared 44,053 Democrat emails with WikiLeaks. I've had a few of you send me this Fox News story that appeared. I want to play it for you, and then I'll have a few more comments on this. Of course you know I will, but listen to this.
An investigator now says Seth Rich was in contact with WikiLeaks.
Not only that, he claims there's been a law enforcement cover-up.
Well, Griff Jenkins live in Washington with these breathtaking, breaking developments. Griff. Brian Ainsley and Steve, good morning. Breaking indeed and developing at a rapid pace. Bombshell new evidence of a former DNC staffer you just showed there, Seth Rich, suggests he was in communications with WikiLeaks prior to his murder last summer. Let me take you back. Here in the nation's capital, it was last July. DNC staffer Seth Rich was shot and killed on the way home from a bar in a trendy Northwest neighborhood here. Police initially saying that they believed it was a botched robbery, but questions remain with the investigation still open. Now, a year later, according to a parallel investigation by former D.C. police homicide detective and Fox News contributor Rod Wheeler, there's evidence that Rich had contact with WikiLeaks. That evidence on a laptop belonging to Seth Rich showing he was talking with WikiLeaks. Wheeler says this smells like a cover-up.
I want to find out who caused that man's death so we can put them behind bars. But if there's somebody in politics, if there's somebody in government, whether it's in the mayor's office or anywhere else in the city that's involved, you better believe they're going to be dragged in and questioned.
So there you have it. Like, this is why I don't think we know the answer to this. I'm not saying that this is the absolute definitive truth on this, but I have always found it very, very strange that you had Julian Assange saying, hey, look, there was an internal DNC leak that we got this information from. They put up $25,000 as a reward to find out who murdered him. Seth Rich was murdered, shot twice. Was not a robbery. His wallet wasn't taken. His phone wasn't taken. His watch wasn't taken. And now you have this, that on this laptop, federal law enforcement investigators found 44,053 emails and 17,761 attachments sent between DNC leaders from January 2015 to May 2016 that Rich shared with WikiLeaks before he was gunned down on July 10th, 2016. Like, that, to me, should be worth an investigation. Don't you think? Don't you think that that at least warrants as much investigation as finding out whether or not Putin had any influence on the U.S. election? I do. But that makes me, I think, a little unusual in keeping an open mind about Donald Trump. I don't love him, as I told you, but I think there just needs to be a little more fairness in looking at all the evidence on it. That gets us into trust. And we're going to talk about this trust survey when we return. Very surprising results. We'll share them all with you when we return on News Talk 770. Okay, you will. One more thing, actually, because I think this is sort of another parallel story that nobody's paying much attention to. There are a couple of lawyers who have recently filed for protection for themselves and their families. They're lawyers who, Jared and Elizabeth Beck, in the DNC fraud lawsuit, they did a Facebook live stream saying that they are seeking protection of the court. And part of the reason why is based on the unusual deaths of Seth Rich. He, of course, was the Democrat worker in the DNC headquarters who ended up dead on a street. Barrington Wisenant and Sean Lucas. So 3 bizarre deaths connected to this, as well as threats and bizarre phone calls that the plaintiffs and counsel had received. Now, I'm kind of curious about getting to the bottom of who killed Seth Rich. Just want you to know, there's a couple of lawyers that are as well. They're so worried they're getting close that they might get bumped off themselves. So that's another story that is out there as well. So weird. Okay, so Project Veritas, we played some of that for you because they went undercover and exposed the fact that there were a number of different arms-length agencies receiving money from the DNC as well as Hillary Clinton's campaign to hire protesters to go disrupt Trump events. So that was the first series of stories that they did. Well, they've done this new one called American Pravda, and what they did is they hired someone to go undercover at CNN to find out what in the world is behind their obsession with the Trump conspiracy story. Now listen to this. Well, our next segment is going to be really interesting. 12 Russians indicted in U.S. election meddling. Federal grand jury indicts 12 officials in the Mueller probe. So what's going on here? Story on CNN from 8 minutes ago. The Justice Department announced indictments in Special Counsel Robert Mueller's investigation of Russian interference in the 2016 election against 12 Russian nationals, and accused them of engaging in a sustained effort to hack into the computer networks of the Democratic DCCC, that's got to be the campaign committee, the DNC, Democratic National Committee, and the presidential campaign of Hillary Clinton, and released that information on the internet under the names DC Leaks and Guccifer 2.0 and through another entity. I wonder who that other entity is. Sort of interesting. Guccifer 2.0, he has said that he got his information from, I think he's implied it was Seth Rich, from the worker who ended up getting shot in the back in Washington following these leaks. Not saying that there's any connection, but I think Guccifer 2.0 has said that he got it on his stick, that he didn't get it through a leak. And let's remember, John Podesta, who makes their password? Anybody could have hacked into that account. In any case, so this is an interesting development. I'll be curious to see what comes out of it. It says apparently all 12 defendants are members of the GRU, a Russian Federation intelligence agency within the main intelligence directorate of the Russian military, who were acting in their official capacities. So talk about making a trip to this formal visit that Trump and Vladimir Putin are going to have together. Talk about making that a little bit awkward. Unless, I suppose, the Russian president is going to say that they were acting alone. I think there's still a fundamental piece. I should probably tell our Edmonton audience this so that they understand where I'm coming from. I've been following this case for a while, and I think the fundamental piece that is missing and has been missing right from the beginning and is still missing today is this allegation of collusion. That somehow this was some deal that was cooked up and doctored up by Trump and the Russians to try to damage Hillary Clinton. As you know, I mean, I think that there's probably all kinds of election interference. I think the Americans interfere in all kinds of elections. I know for sure that U.S.-backed foundations give money to environmental groups here to interfere in our elections, and we'll be talking about that more on Monday. So there's a lot of meddling that goes on. The ones that I have found the most credible in the arguments that have been made is that there does appear to have been some kind of hacking effort into the registration lists of a handful of voter registration election officials. And I think what happened there is they realized the most that they could do would be to delete or change the information of electors. And if you were off the list, then your solution is to go and swear an affidavit and you'd be able to vote anyway. So I think they realized, well, that's not going to work. All of the voting machines were offline, so there was no way to hack into them. So the best that they could do was some kind of bot campaign to push out negative messages. And we've seen that with Facebook too. The trouble, though, is that the Facebook messages and ads are on both sides. It seemed to me that they were all kind of anti-Hillary, but they supported Bernie Sanders as well as supported Donald Trump. So they were just trying to foment dissent through that means. Now, this is kind of an interesting new development, trying to trace down who was responsible for the hacks. And now we've got two different stories on the table. What do you think is the most credible? I'm kind of interested in knowing. But again, here's the problem. There still isn't a linkage back to the Trump campaign. My sense of it is this, that I think that there is a lot of connection between the Clintons and the Russian government. I mean, for heaven's sakes, the money that was being funneled into the Clinton Foundation while she was in the State Department, in addition to the private speaking fees that Trump got after going to Russia, those are all pretty suspicious. Did I say Trump? Bill Clinton got after going to Russia. Sorry, misspoke. There's a lot of connections with the Clintons. And I think what happened is that the Clintons were digging up information to try to point fingers elsewhere because they were the ones who were colluding with Russian officials to create the Golden Showers dossier, which became the pretext for the Obama administration to set up a surveillance campaign on Trump campaign workers. And it's striking to me that with all of that effort, what have we been doing now? A year and a half into this investigation, they still haven't been able to draw a linkage with any in the Trump campaign. So, yeah, I'm prepared to believe that the Russians were meddling in their election. I'm prepared to believe they're probably going to try to meddle in ours. And it seems like that's just the way of the world these days. But the campaign to try to bring down the president on this issue, I think, especially even with this result today, I don't know that they've gotten any further with it.
Now with our ABC News exclusive, the parents of Seth Rich. He was the Democratic Party staffer killed in 2016. Fox News ran a false story wrongly suggesting Rich may have leaked DNC emails to WikiLeaks. Fox later retracted the story, but Rich's parents are now suing the network. Tom Yamas back with the story.
George, good morning again. The Rich family is now suing Fox News, one of their reporters and a well-connected Republican donor who they say coordinated on a fake news story and put it on the network. Throughout my interview with the family, they described the torture of dealing with their son's murder while battling what they call lies on the Fox News channel.
Just 4 months before the presidential election, Seth Rich, a 27-year-old staffer for the Democratic National Committee, was shot and killed in Washington, D.C.
He was shot twice in the back. He put up a struggle.
Police say it was a botched robbery, but the incident exploded from a local crime story into international news when, according to a new lawsuit, conspiracy theorists and Fox News tried tying the killing to the upcoming election.
I want the people who started the lies, who are responsible for the lies, held accountable. This has got to stop.
12 days after Seth's murder, WikiLeaks published more than 44,000 hacked DNC emails. U.S. intelligence agencies say Russia is behind the attack. But the Rich family says fringe political groups started spreading a conspiracy theory that Seth, who worked for the DNC, leaked the emails.
The fact that he worked for the DNC and the timing worked for those who had, other motives.
Seth's parents say there was never any evidence connecting their son to WikiLeaks.
His computer didn't have anything on it. He would never have done it.
But they say that didn't stop Fox News. In their lawsuit, the Riches claim a Fox investigative reporter and a Republican donor with ties to the network lied to the family to win their trust, promising to help solve their son's murder, when actually, according to the lawsuit, they were planning to tie Seth to the DNC hack, painting their son as a criminal and a traitor to the United States. The story ran prominently on Fox News, including on Sean Hannity's show.
If this is true, and Seth Rich gave WikiLeaks these DNC emails, this blows the whole Russia collusion narrative completely out of the water.
Roughly a week later, Fox retracting the story.
Out of respect for the family's wishes for now, I am not discussing this matter at this time.
They never called us to check any facts. They took a rumor and ran with it.
The Rich family says their son's reputation is forever tarnished. They now hope to find justice in court.
We lost his body the first time, and the second time we lost his soul. They took more from us with the lies. So we want our son's life and his soul restored, and I want our life back so we can move forward again.